There's something wrong with you, and you feel it. Even when everything seems fine, you feel it. Deep down, there's a discomfort that never goes away. You might call it anxiety, boredom, anguish. You might pretend it's just exhausting, but the truth is something else. You're living a lie. And worse, you've grown attached to it. This way you think is you isn't. It's just what's left after years of reshaping yourself to fit where you never belonged, to please people who never truly saw you. You created a persona, and now you're stuck in it. You limit yourself to keep the fantasy alive. You repeat the character every day. You smile when you want to scream. You agree when you want to disappear, and you don't even notice anymore. But today, you're going to notice. Today, we're going to tear off that armor until only what's real is left, even if it hurts, even if you resist. Now, do this. Comment below, "I know this isn't me." Write it down. It's not a suggestion, it's the first step. If you can't even do that, there's no point in going on, because what comes next takes courage. You got used to wearing a name, a voice, a way of walking. You wake up every day and step into a role. And you do it so well, you've even forgotten it's an act. You think it's you, but it's just the character you've learned to play. The mask is comfortable, it protects, it gives you a script, what to say, how to react, when to smile, when to explode. The mask gives you a manual for social survival. The problem is, you don't survive, you shrink, you compress. You adapt so much to the mold, you can't even remember your original shape. Think of how many times you swallowed what you truly wanted to say just to maintain an image. How many times you said yes when you wanted to scream no. How many times you agreed with an idea that tore you apart inside just to support the persona you forced yourself to build. That's the mask, a pact of silence between you and the lie. The cruelest part? You didn't create that mask alone. It was put on you. Since childhood, with every scolding for being authentic, with every comparison, with every conditional compliment, every time someone told you what was pretty, acceptable, right. Little by little, you understood. Being yourself wasn't enough, so you started performing. And time passed. The mask grew with you. It changed names, clothes, speech, but its function was always the same: to hide. What you show the world today is just an edited reflection, a stained glass painted with fears, traumas, expectations. And when someone looks into your eyes, they don't even see you. They see the version you want to appear to be. But here's the truth. The more you protect that image, the sicker you get, because the soul knows and the soul demands. That's why there's so much anguish, so much anxiety, so much emptiness. It's not bad luck, it's not fate, it's not just life. It's the cost of keeping a lie alive. Your life energy is being drained to sustain a character. And the most tragic part? You've already forgotten who you were before the mask. It's stuck so tight to your face that tearing it off feels impossible. It hurts, it burns, it's terrifying, but it's the only way. You won't evolve while continuing to be who you never were. And the only way to discover who you really are is to unmask this you've learned to defend. That first break is the hardest, because there's still attachment, there's still fear, there's still a false sense of security. But this is where the process begins. Not of changing, but of remembering. And if this struck something in you, write in the comments. No more living with the mask glued on. Write it for real, because when you verbalize it, you start to spit out the poison. And to be free, You'll need to purge every drop of the lie you've swallowed until now. You think you know yourself, but what you know is the shell you were taught to protect. But there's something underneath, and we're going to start digging now. You spent your whole life being taught to do the right thing, do what's possible, do your best, do what's expected, do it to earn love, respect, value. Everything revolves around what you do, but no one ever taught you how to be. And that's where the collapse begins, because when doing comes before being, everything becomes a performance. You don't exist, you function. You're useful, productive, adapted, but empty. The foundation of who you think you are is built on actions, roles, titles, and labels. I'm a hard worker. I'm responsible. I'm studious. I'm strong. All of that sounds like identity, but it's just conditioned behavior. It's just a reflection. You could lose all of it tomorrow: the job, the status, the body, the achievements, and then what's left? Most people spiral when what they do collapses because they no longer know who they are without it. It's like the ground disappears, and it really does, because their ground wasn't internal. It was a platform built out of pieces that don't belong to the essence. Know what's dangerous about that? Living an entire life building a fortress that crumbles at the first tremor. Spending decades protecting a castle with no foundation, and wondering, in the end, why everything feels so fragile. You don't know yourself. You know the layers you put on to survive, but not the core. You define yourself by memories, traumas, desires, fears, ideas, ideologies, but none of that is you. You feel anger, but you are not the anger. You have a body, but you are not the body. You think, but you are not your thoughts. All of that is temporary. All of it changes. But there's something that watches all of it, and that's where truth begins. The being doesn't shout. It doesn't show off. It doesn't try to prove anything. It simply is. And that's exactly why it's ignored. Because we live in a society that worships noise, that rewards the well-made mask, the convincing character, the performance over essence. And you, wanting to belong, adapted. But being is the opposite of adapting. Being is confronting. It's standing in your truth even when no one validates it. It's existing without asking permission. And that's terrifying. Because when you stop performing, people disappear. Because they were attached to the character, not to you. But here's the point. Either you hold your being, or you keep living a life that isn't yours. You can't balance both worlds. At some point, you'll have to choose between maintaining the comfortable lie or facing the solitude that comes with truth. And on this journey back to yourself, one thing needs to be clear. It's not about adding more. It's about removing, cutting, tearing, stripping, until what remains is real. Now close your eyes for a moment, silence everything, and feel. What remains when everything goes quiet? That's where we'll keep digging. You don't know yourself, and that's not an insult, it's just a fact. Because everything you repeat about yourself didn't come from you. It was pasted, thrown, tattooed onto your mind by external voices. Father, mother, school, friends, traumas, rejections. Every piece of what you call me was shaped under pressure. Believing that you're just like this became more comfortable than investigating where it came from. And when someone points it out, you defend it, as if defending that idea is protecting your very existence. But if you stop for 2 minutes and look inside, you'll see those certainties aren't solid. They're just memorized repetitions. You were trained to play a role, And the most tragic part, you believed that role was you. The shy one, the funny one, the responsible one, the spiritual one, the tough one, the sensitive one. You clung to labels that served you at some point because they worked. They brought acceptance, escape, control, comfort. But that's not essence, that's protection. And too much protection becomes a prison. There's a real you in there, suffocated by layers and layers of discourse, expectation, effort. And maybe you've even felt it, in a deep silence, in a breakdown, in an emotional collapse, in a moment of pure presence where the mind goes quiet. But it's rare, because the character is louder. It acts on autopilot, and the more you repeat the pattern, the further you drift from your origin. You don't know who you are, but you feel that something's wrong. A quiet discomfort, a restlessness in your chest that you try to silence with distraction, with work, with spirituality, with relationships that keep you exactly where you are. And that's why this hits you, because even if you don't admit it, you know. You know you're distant. You know you created a self that works for the world, but not for the soul. And it's exhausting.
I don't want you to say anything now. Just write one word that defines you, the first that comes to mind, just one. Then tell me if it still makes sense at the end of all this. You spend your life trying to figure out who you are. You read books, go to therapy, take personality tests, analyze your past, compare traits, search for archetypes, zodiac signs, MBTI, anything that gives you a ready-made answer. Something that says this is who you are. A label, a mold, an identity. But let me tell you something that might irritate you. Who you are isn't in the labels you collect. It's in what you choose to embody when no one's watching. The problem is, you've been conditioned to look outside for what can only be built within. They taught you that being someone depends on validation, that you need to prove you're good, kind, talented, smart, strong, wise, balanced, social, depending on what's trending. And you tried. You tried so hard you started confusing performance with essence. But being isn't about showing. It's about sustaining. It doesn't matter what you say, what you post, what you read or repeat. What matters is when life puts pressure on you, what remains? You want to know who you are? Watch how you act in pain, in boredom, in rejection, in loss, in silence. Want to know your real worth? Look at what you do when no one's clapping, when no one expects anything, when there's no stage, no audience. Being isn't a definition, it's a daily construction. And it doesn't begin when you understand everything. It begins when you stop running from what you feel. You won't find your truth through overthinking. You'll find it by getting your hands dirty, by going within, feeling anger, jealousy, fear, shame without covering it up with positivity, without reciting mantras to hide the chaos. Because only those who have the courage to face themselves raw without makeup can discover any truth inside. The rest is just a mask with a pretty name. Now answer me down below. When was the last time you stopped to really listen to yourself without trying to fix anything? Seriously, write it. That simple exercise might show you more about who you are than any 1,000-page book ever could. And if it hurts to face it, it's because there's truth. And if there's truth, that's where your rebuilding begins. You've spent your whole life trying to do the right thing, but you never stopped to ask yourself if it was really you doing it. Some people live on autopilot so deeply they've become employees of their own persona. Wake up, work, interact, produce, plan, react, all based on an idea they created of themselves. And the more they do, the more they reinforce that idea, as if doing is the only way to prove they exist. But what if I told you that all this doing might just be a sophisticated form of escape? You keep yourself busy, filled, validated because you can't handle your own silence. Because if you stop for 5 minutes, you begin to dissolve. You start to see that none of what you're doing has real roots. Have you noticed that? That sometimes everything you accomplish feels artificial. That no matter how much you produce, study, or grow, something still feels missing. That emptiness you try to patch with action is the absence of being. Because being doesn't need a resume, doesn't need applause, doesn't need an audience, a purpose, or utility. It just needs space. And that space you don't give because you're too busy doing. Doing to prove, to compensate, to avoid feeling, to avoid looking at what's really in there. Look around. A world full of hyper-productive people, but without soul. You know why that happens? Because they confused presence with performance, and you bought into that lie. They made us believe that being is what you deliver, but being is what you sustain when you don't have to deliver anything. When you fall silent, what remains? When you're not being useful, admired, efficient, who's left? That answer is uncomfortable, I know, but that's where your freedom lives. Now stop everything and answer honestly. Are you living or just functioning well? Comment that now. Because if you don't confront that question, you'll keep fooling yourself that your performance is who you are. And then there's no life left, just a character in continuous production.
If you want to truly see yourself, you'll have to face the contrast. Because no one sees the light when immersed only in light. You only see what is when you start to see what isn't. And that's where most people freeze, because it hurts. The pain of contrast is inevitable. It's what shows you where your persona ends and where what was amputated, suppressed, or distorted begins. Without contrast, you live inside the bubble of your own narrative, believing you're whole when in truth you're only half. You are not just what you show, you're also what you hide, what you deny, what you condemn in others. The shadow you point out there is just a reflection of the part you buried inside. You reject the arrogant, but deep down you're angry at your own submission. You criticize the ambitious, but you've never had the courage to want more. You judge the selfish, but never learned to prioritize yourself without guilt. And contrast exposes that, because everything you criticize too harshly reveals something that still controls you. But instead of using contrast to heal, you use it to run. You run from anger, envy, jealousy, desire, as if those feelings prove something's wrong with you. They don't. They prove there's something alive in there, something your persona tried to erase but didn't kill. You know what that means? That as long as you pretend to be only light, you'll live blind. Only when you accept the shadow without identifying with it does integration begin. And that integration is messy, uncomfortable, terrifying, because it destroys the comfort of the image you created. But without it, you'll keep trying to evolve based on a lie. You'll do inner work with a good boy badge hanging from your chest. You meditate, grow, help others, but all through the lens of your persona, all filtered. And as long as it's filtered, you're trapped. So do yourself a favor. Stop trying to be just beautiful, accepted, spiritual, balanced. Look at what you're hiding. Step into what you avoid. Face the contrast without fear, because it's there that you start to remember who you are. Have you ever asked yourself what keeps that mask glued to your face? There's a point, an anchor, a cornerstone. It's an idea, an event, a judgment, almost always old, almost always ignored, that became the foundation for everything you believe yourself to be. Maybe it was the moment someone called you stupid, and you've lived ever since trying to prove the opposite. Maybe it was when they said you were too good, and you've been a hostage to that image ever since.
Or when you were rejected and swore no one would ever see your vulnerability again. That rupture point shapes your entire personality. You build beliefs, habits, goals, relationships, all to protect that foundation. All so no one touches that trigger. And the most ironic part? You forget the event, but stay trapped in your response to it. The persona begins as defense, but over time becomes a prison. You're no longer reacting to today's world, you're reacting to yesterday's trauma. And the character you created to protect yourself now keeps you at war with your own essence. You've become a walking suit of armor. And worse, you're attached to it. You love the character you created. You defend it, feed it, live for it. And you're so afraid of falling apart that you'd rather stay wounded but recognizable.
But if you truly want freedom, you'll have to find that cornerstone. You'll have to press on the wound that gave birth to your mask. You'll have to enter the trauma, not as a victim, but as an investigator. It's uncomfortable, exhausting, but it's the turning point. Because once you find that anchor, you can release it. And when it drops, the whole structure collapses. The persona begins to crack, and you begin to breathe. Now pay attention. It's no use understanding this with your head. You need to feel it. You need to let yourself touch that point without running, without justifying, without hiding. And then, maybe for the first time, you'll see yourself. Not how you see yourself in the mirror, but as you are when no one's watching. Have you noticed how most people are always trying to appear to be something? Smart, strong, deep, correct, happy. It's a constant effort, almost desperate. Because deep down, they know they're not any of those things. Or worse, they feel that without the performance, there's nothing left. And when you start dismantling your persona, that nothing shows up. A hole, an uncomfortable silence, a void. It's as if everything that held you up disappears, and there's just you, staring at the mirror, not knowing what you're seeing. Most people run at this point. They flee to a label, a certainty, a new character. But the ones who can face the void find a different kind of strength. And that's where humor comes in. True humor. Not bitter mockery, not venomous irony, but the lightness of someone who no longer needs to prove anything, who knows they're ridiculous and that's okay, who can laugh at themselves because they're no longer trying to uphold a lie. Humor is the breaking of the ego's seriousness. It's the antidote to the rigidity of the persona. It's the moment you realize how absurd it is to take yourself so seriously, and you let go. Let go of the act, let go of the mask, let go of the need to seem like someone. And in that space, something new begins to grow. Because the void, though terrifying, is fertile. It's where truth arises, intuition, creativity. It's in the silence that you finally hear, for the first time, your own voice without interference. But this doesn't come with a manual. It doesn't come with catchy phrases. There's no script. It's uncomfortable. It's lonely. And sometimes it even feels wrong. But it's not. It's just your system adjusting. It's the character dying and the being beginning to emerge. Now answer me. Don't overthink it. Can you handle silence? Can you go without posting, without proving, without affirming anything, just existing? Or do you still need a stage? If the question bothers you, good. It bothers because there's still attachment. And where there's attachment, there's persona. Sit with that for now. Don't try to understand it all. Because sometimes it's when you stop searching that you begin to find. There comes a point when you can no longer negotiate with the lie. You try to adjust it. Try to reshape the mask to look more authentic. Try to inject a little truth into the character, as if that would be enough. But it's not, because in the end, the mask is still a mask. Even if it has poetry, even if it has purpose, it's still a barrier, still a filter between who you are and what the world sees. And there comes a moment when everything inside you starts to scream for rupture. It's no longer about healing. It's not about self-improvement. It's about self-destruction, destroying everything that was built on top of your essence, everything that was put on you to keep you controllable, acceptable, functional. The voice of your parents, the rules of school, the expectations of society, the fears you inherited without realizing.
Destruction doesn't mean turning to dust. It means returning to your original form, to your essence, to what you were before they taught you to be someone. Is it painful? Yes, but it hurts more to keep being who you're not. And no, this rupture isn't a scream. It's not a violent revolution. It can come in silence. In that moment, you look in the mirror and don't recognize yourself and decide not to run anymore. It comes in surrender, in the choice to unlearn, to let go of what felt so yours but never was. And yes, you'll lose things in this process, people, titles, certainties, but you'll gain something you never truly had, freedom. Not the freedom to do whatever you want, but the freedom to be who you are, without needing to explain, convince, or prove it. True rupture isn't external, it happens inside. And when it does, the outside world changes too, because you stop playing the game. You stop following the script. You stop selling your soul for crumbs of validation. And then, yes, a new life begins. Not one based on performance, but on presence. Not driven by fear, but by truth. Maybe you're not fully ready for this rupture, but if you've made it this far, you've already started to crack. You feel it, and you feel it because the lie doesn't fit like it used to. It no longer holds, no longer silences what's screaming inside. Just one thing, don't try to glue the pieces back. Let it break. Let it fall, let it die, because what's reborn after the rupture is real. When everything breaks, what remains? Silence, a strange, deep, almost uncomfortable silence, because for the first time, there's no more noise from the persona filling the space, no more automatic voice narrating your life as if it were truth. You start to notice something that was always there, but the mask muffled it. The source. Source of what? Of everything. The source isn't a mystical idea. It's perception. It's what's left when the ego disappears. It's that raw, almost formless sensation that shows up when you no longer have to perform. It's the state where the I stops being a character and becomes simply presence. You don't think about being alive. You feel it. You don't explain, you don't analyze, you just exist. And that changes everything. Because for the first time, you're not the effect, you're the cause. You're not the result of traumas, beliefs, programming. You are before all of that. And when you realize this, something opens, a space, as if you're seeing the world without lenses. No distortion, no filter, pure. Raw, infinite. This is the perception of the infinite. It's not that you've become enlightened, zen, untouchable. You've simply stopped identifying with what used to limit you. And in that state, you touch something that can't be described in words, only lived. It's like reality stops being a burden and becomes a flow, like time slows down. Like everything makes sense even without explanation. You no longer feel the need to be someone because you see that the someone you were trying to be was an illusion. And what's left now is everything. You can still live in this world, work, build, relate. But now it's no longer performance. It's expression. You act, speak, choose not to please, impress, or protect, but because it's inevitable, because it comes from within. It comes from the source. The perception of the infinite doesn't separate you from the world. It reconnects you, but in a way you've never experienced before, without the need for control, without attachment to the character, without fear of disappearing. Because now you know what you truly are can't disappear, because it was never born. It has always been. Made it this far? Then you already understand. What you used to call me was just a role. Memorized, repeated, pretended. But now it's torn. And what's left is silence, presence, beginning. Don't try to glue the pieces. Don't go back to the disguise. Stay in the void. Stay in the shock. That's where the real is born. And to seal it once and for all, write in the comments, I broke the mirror. No explaining, no thinking, just write it and leave.